So this video is about how to help somebody who doesn't want to be helped. Now that is super tough, isn't it? If you have a loved one, friend, family member, somebody in your life who is important to you and you can see them suffering and it's probably impacting on you too, and they don't want to get help, that is really tough, isn't it? And it can be so tempting to try and push them into getting help. And definitely encouraging someone to get help, letting them know that you're there for them, that you will support them through them getting help is great and really important. But the thing that I have really learned through doing my work is that if somebody doesn't want to get help, if someone doesn't want to change, there is very little that you can do about it. Somebody has to engage. They have to be part of it in order for them to want to change. Now, that doesn't mean that there's nothing you can do, okay? And I'm going to talk to you about the things that you can do, but you may short-term have to accept that they're not in that space yet. They are not ready to change. And as frustrating as that is, you constantly pushing them and trying to persuade them is probably not going to work. And trust me, I have had people come to therapy, particularly I often get this with sort of teenagers, young adults or spouses, where they have effectively been made or pushed to come to therapy by someone else. And it just doesn't work. I cannot force someone to change either. I can present them with all of the rationale and help them to see how life could be different, but if they are not ready and willing, then there's nothing that can be done, right? I once worked with a teenager and he really wasn't engaging, but he'd obviously been sort of pushed to come to therapy. And at one point I just sort of said to him, I sort of feel like maybe your heart's not really in this. And he said, yeah, no, to be honest, my OCD doesn't bother me. And I said, well, maybe we should think about stopping the sessions and come back when you're ready. And about 2 years later, he had just finished his A-levels. He wanted to go traveling around the world and he came back to see me. And we had a few sessions and he was totally on board with it. And he made massive change really quickly. So my point of telling you that story is just because someone doesn't want to change now, however hard that is for you, however much it's impacting on your life and however much it would be better for them if they changed, sometimes we just have to be patient, okay? Which I know is a really big ask. So what can you actually do when somebody doesn't want to seek help? Well, the first thing that you can do is what you're already doing, which is trying to understand the problem better. And the second thing that I think is so important is to try and find some kind of support system for yourself. If you are in a situation where somebody's OCD is impacting on you, is making your life difficult, maybe on a daily basis, you need support. You need somewhere to let off steam so that, that protects you, keeps you healthier, and hopefully helps you be less frustrated with the person who is suffering, who is, not yet ready to change. So find yourself some support. Do things that you love doing, rather than just focusing on that person who's got the issue, who's not ready to solve it. Okay. And now that can be really hard if that's someone who needs a lot of your support. Finding time for yourself, getting out, doing things that you like doing. It can be really hard, but it's super important because they need you to be strong so that when they are ready to change, you're strong enough to be there as well to help them through therapy or them doing their own therapy. Whatever the journey is, then you need to stay strong. Otherwise, you won't be very helpful, right? And I know that when you see someone else suffering, it feels maybe really hard or wrong to do things for yourself. But if we don't look after ourselves, we're no good at looking after other people, okay? So the other things that you can do which help are learn how to not reassure that person. Now, I've talked about this in another video, but reassurance is one of the big maintaining factors for OCD. Okay, so that, I'm sure you already know what I mean when I say that. That thing where the person with OCD asks you, what, like checks something with you, or asks you, oh, do you think I'm bad? Or do you think that's possible? Or did I shut the door? Or, I mean, obviously there's a trillion ways someone can seek reassurance from you. But ask yourself, when they ask me something, are they asking me something that they actually could know themselves or do know themselves, but they just want to be sure, they just want to be comforted by me telling them? If that's the answer, you need to learn to stop doing it, okay? Because it seems like a good idea in the short term, but how well does it actually work? Is it solving the problem in the long term? It won't be, right? Because if it was solving it, then it would get less and less. But what we find with reassurance is people need more and more of it to get the same kind of hit from it. Okay, so when somebody asks you for reassurance, you need to learn how to respond in a way that is not mean or cruel, but does not give them the certainty that they are looking for. Okay, so you do this by giving a very non-committal, like uncertain answer. So obviously it depends on the question they're asking, but this is the general thing, is you're responding by saying things like, oh, I'm not sure, I don't know, maybe, who knows, that kind of level of very uncertain answer. Okay, and you're going to have to practice that, because it won't come naturally, because what comes naturally to us is to try and reassure people. It's when our friend says to us, oh, I did really crap in that exam. We go, oh, no, I'm sure you didn't. You probably did really well. It's a natural human instinct to try and make that person feel better, okay? But it doesn't work with OCD. So learn how to give ambiguous answers. Now, if you've been reassuring someone with OCD for a long time, you might want to discuss with them that you have learned that this is unhelpful and that you are now going to change how you deal with it. Now, if you are dealing with someone who's not yet ready to change, they are not going to be happy with you. Well, their OCD is not going to be happy with you. Okay. But that is for you to take that short-term pain of them acting out or, getting really angry in order for the long-term gain. Okay. Because whilst you provide enough reassurance, that minimizes or lessens the need for that person to actually change themselves, because they're getting a bit of what they need from you. Okay, so that's learning not to reassure them, all right? Now, the second thing is trying to not get involved in appeasing the OCD in any other way. So I mean, particularly if you're living with someone or you spend a lot of time with someone and you change your behavior to make it easier for them in the short term. Okay, so if you are, if you're the person who leaves last so that they don't have to check the front door, or you are, hiding all the knives in the house so that they never get triggered by a knife, or whatever it is, any way that you're adapting your behavior, this particularly happens a lot with people who have contamination OCD, is that the person they live with ends up having to do the similar kind of rituals or behaviors, like not touching things or getting undressed in a certain, and putting their clothes in certain places, all these things. So as the less that you engage in helping out the OCD, because that's what you're doing, you're not helping the person, you're helping the OCD. So the less you engage in that, the harder it's going to be for that person to exist the way they're existing. Now, I get that sounds really cruel, doesn't it? But what I'm saying is, the ways that you make it easier for that person to exist on a day-to-day basis also make it easier for them to not seek alternative ways of being, to not get help, to not want to change. Okay. The more difficult their life is, the more uncomfortable it is, the less you are adapting, the harder it will be for them, and the more likely they are to end up wanting to get help. Okay, so I know that can seem really hard. And again, I'm not suggesting you go from doing everything that the OCD wants to saying, right, I'm not doing it anymore, that's it. It may be that you have to slowly make change. You have to start putting rules in place. But you can put rules in place. You do not need to let the OCD rule your life. If you have a child who you're supplying with 17 bottles of hand wash a day, you can stop doing that. Okay, their OCD will find other ways of trying to make themselves feel better. They'll do more avoidance. You not supplying the hand wash is not going to miraculously solve the problem, but it's going to make it a hell of a lot harder for that person to keep engaging in the way that they're engaging. So it's that cruel to be kind thing. Okay, you can do things that make it harder for them to exist without change. All right. But maybe that's the wrong way of looking at it. What you're doing is, by not supporting the OCD, you are supporting the person, and you are increasing the likelihood of them being able to make really good, substantial change by facing the problem differently. Okay, so look after yourself, learn not to reassure them, and learn not to, or stop, or don't start doing things that are not really for that person, but for the OCD. And I guess lastly is, remember, for some people, especially when their OCD is really severe or they're in a really bad time of it, that person can, come across in a way that is not great for you. And just try and remember that that is not them. It's the OCD kind of talking, and that a lot of that is an expression of their fear and their pain. So if you can make a stand for someone and you can keep supporting them, but not their OCD, OCD is an eminently treatable disorder, okay? But they have to want to get there, okay? So be patient and carry on doing all the great things that you're doing and being there for them.